I had always imagined that a getaway on a yacht would be the perfect remedy for my marriage. The salty air, the sound of waves lapping against the hull, and the promise of sun-soaked days could surely mend what had begun to fray between my husband and me. However, when I brought up the idea to Mark, he frowned, his brow furrowing as he calculated the costs in his mind. "We can't just throw money around like that," he said, shaking his head. I felt a pang of disappointment. I had hoped this trip could rekindle something we had lost. Yet, just when I thought all hope was lost, Mark surprised me by agreeing to fund the trip. "Maybe it's time we took a break," he said with an uncharacteristic softness in his voice. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a flicker of excitement. But then came another twist. His boss, Tom, offered to join us. "It'll be fun," he insisted with an infectious grin. I hesitated but ultimately agreed, thinking perhaps Tom's presence would lighten the mood and bring us closer together. As we prepared for our departure from Newport Harbor, I felt both anticipation and anxiety swirling within me. The weather forecast warned of storms approaching our planned sailing dates, but I dismissed it as mere exaggeration. After all, who doesn't love a little adventure? We set sail on a bright Saturday morning, the sun glimmering off the water like diamonds scattered across an endless blue expanse. The first few hours were filled with laughter and chatter as we navigated through the waves. Tom's charm was undeniable. He told stories that made us laugh until our sides hurt. Mark seemed more relaxed than usual, perhaps buoyed by Tom's jovial spirit or maybe just enjoying being away from work for once. It was easy to forget about our problems amidst the idyllic scenery and camaraderie. But as evening approached and shadows lengthened across the deck, an unsettling noise echoed from below. The engine sputtered ominously before falling silent. My heart sank as panic set in. We were adrift in open water with no land in sight. "What do we do now?" I asked frantically while trying to mask my fear. Tom attempted to reassure us, but his confidence did little to quell my rising anxiety. "Let's check it out," he said firmly as he led us below deck. The cramped space felt suffocating as we huddled around the engine, a tangled mess of wires and metal that seemed beyond our understanding. Mark tried to help, but frustration quickly mounted when nothing worked as planned. With darkness rapidly approaching and no sign of rescue on the horizon, we faced an uncomfortable truth. We were stuck at sea with dwindling options and rising tensions between us all. My initial hopes of rekindling my marriage began to feel like distant dreams overshadowed by uncertainty and fear. As night fell around us like a heavy blanket, I realized how precarious our situation had become, not just because of our mechanical failure but also due to the emotional undercurrents swirling among us three. Tom's earlier charm now felt like an added complication rather than a relief from my worries about Mark. This was uncharted territory for all of us. Then came another jolt. An unexpected wave crashed against the side of the yacht, sending us reeling momentarily before regaining balance. My heart raced as I clutched onto anything solid for support while exchanging worried glances with both men aboard. Uncertainty hung thick in the air like fog over water. "Stay calm," Tom urged again after steadying himself against a wall while looking at both me and Mark intently. His eyes reflected determination mixed with concern, a strange combination that made me question everything happening around me. With limited supplies left on board and no clear plan emerging amidst rising fears about survival alone at sea together, all three of us began grappling not only with physical challenges but also emotional ones too as tensions continued escalating between us under pressure from nature itself. "Let's come up with something," Mark suggested finally after several moments passed without any further ideas being voiced aloud, his tone decisive yet strained at once reflecting both hope mixed alongside apprehension about what lay ahead. But just as we started brainstorming potential solutions together, another wave crashed hard against our vessel, jolting everyone into action once more, forcing all thoughts aside momentarily while reminding each other how fragile life truly is out here adrift amidst vastness surrounding us, endlessly stretching beyond sight itself. I couldn't shake off feeling trapped. not only by circumstances beyond our control but also within this web of complicated relationships forming right before my eyes, threatening everything familiar about home life back on shore where comfort awaited if only we could reach it safely again soon enough. Before darkness engulfed completely, leaving nothing behind except memories etched forever into minds struggling against despair looming large overhead, waiting patiently until dawn broke finally, revealing new possibilities ahead once more. Just then, a distant light flickered across waters far away, promising hope, yet again igniting sparks within hearts yearning desperately for rescue, even if shadows still lingered close behind, reminding everyone involved how easily trust could fracture under pressure when faced head-on without warning. The engine sputtered ominously, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The laughter we had shared moments ago faded into an uncomfortable silence. My mind raced as I tried to focus on fixing the problem, but panic was creeping in. The boss, Mark, was already at the engine compartment, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Can you check the fuel line?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. I nodded, though I had no idea what I was looking for. My heart raced as I glanced over at my husband, Tom, who stood at the helm, worry etched on his face. "Is it supposed to sound like that?" Tom shouted over the noise of the waves crashing against the hull. "No," Mark replied sharply. "We need to work together if we want to get out of this." I could feel the weight of our situation pressing down on us as we scrambled around the engine. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across the deck that seemed to mirror our growing fears. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from below deck. I jumped back instinctively as Mark cursed under his breath. "The engines completely failed," he said grimly. "We're adrift." Panic surged through me as I looked at Tom's worried expression. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We need to find a way to signal for help," Mark suggested urgently. "But first, let's check our communication devices." As we rummaged through supplies, a wave of despair washed over me when I realized our phones were useless, no signal out here in the middle of nowhere. "Great," Tom muttered sarcastically. "Just perfect." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as dark clouds began to roll in across the sky. The weather forecast hadn't mentioned storms like this one. It seemed nature conspired against us just when things were starting to feel somewhat normal again. "We should prepare for rough weather," Mark said firmly. "Let's secure everything on deck." As we worked together to tie down loose items and brace ourselves for what lay ahead, an unexpected moment caught me off guard. Mark reached out and touched my arm lightly while giving me an encouraging smile. In that instant, something shifted between us. We kissed briefly as if seeking comfort amidst chaos. Reality crashed back into focus when thunder rumbled ominously overhead. The waves began to swell around us as rain started pouring down in sheets. "We need to get below deck," Tom shouted above the storm's roar. Mark nodded and gestured toward the entrance leading inside while keeping an eye on me. We stumbled down into the cramped quarters just as a powerful gust rocked the yacht violently. Inside felt stifling. Fear hung heavy in the air between us, three adults trapped together with no escape route visible anywhere nearby. "What if we capsize?" I whispered nervously. "I won't let that happen," Tom replied with determination but faltering confidence. As darkness enveloped us outside and water splashed against windows like angry fists pounding relentlessly, our collective anxiety heightened further still. How long could we survive like this? Would help ever come? A sudden crash reverberated through the yacht as another wave slammed against us with terrifying force, causing everything around us to shudder violently again. It felt like time stood still while chaos reigned supreme outside those walls, protecting us from nature's fury unleashed upon this small vessel meant for leisure, now turned into something sinister entirely. "We can't stay here forever," I exclaimed desperately, trying not to think about what might happen next if we didn't find a way out soon enough before panic set in completely among all three of us confined within these walls. each minute stretching longer than anticipated, leaving nothing but uncertainty hanging thickly around every breath taken since entering this nightmare scenario unfolding right before our eyes. "Let's come up with a plan," Mark suggested, suddenly breaking through my spiraling thoughts while glancing between Tom and me, intently searching for answers hidden somewhere deep within ourselves, still yearning for survival despite overwhelming odds stacked against us here today, adrift at sea without guidance nor direction leading back home where safety awaited patiently beyond these turbulent waters swirling relentlessly beneath our feet, threatening everything familiar left behind far away. I took a deep breath, trying hard not to let fear consume me entirely. There had to be some way forward, even if hope seemed dimmer than before, with each passing moment ticking by steadily toward inevitable darkness looming just ahead, threatening everything familiar once more. Then came another jolt. A sudden wave nearly capsized us again, forcing all three of us closer together, instinctively clinging onto whatever support remained available nearby while fighting against forces beyond our control, pushing back harder than ever before, testing limits previously unknown until now, feeling utterly vulnerable, exposed beneath nature's wrath unleashed fully upon this small yacht, drifting silently amidst uncertainty, lurking dangerously close behind every corner, waiting patiently until dawn broke, finally revealing new possibilities ahead once more. The engine sputtered, the sound echoing ominously in the stillness. I could feel panic rising within me as I glanced at both men. My husband's boss, Mark, was trying to maintain a calm demeanor, but I could see the tension in his jaw. My heart raced. We needed to act quickly. "Let's check the engine again," I suggested, hoping to sound more confident than I felt. Mark nodded, leading the way to the back of the yacht. My husband, Tom, followed closely behind, his expression a mix of concern and frustration. We were all aware that time was running out as darkness crept closer. As we reached the engine compartment, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. The machinery looked more complicated than ever under this pressure. "What if we can't fix it?" Tom asked, his voice strained. "We'll find a way," Mark replied firmly, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. We worked together in silence for a few moments, each of us lost in our thoughts while fumbling with tools and cables. Suddenly, there was a loud clunk from deep within the engine. Mark cursed softly under his breath as he pulled back from the machine. "It's worse than I thought," he admitted reluctantly. Just then, we heard a low rumble in the distance. A storm was approaching faster than expected. My stomach dropped at the realization that our situation was about to become even more dire. "We need to secure everything on board," I urged them both. As we scrambled to tie down loose items and prepare for rough weather ahead, an unexpected wave crashed against us again, sending us reeling off balance. In that moment of chaos, our bodies collided, our lips met briefly before we pulled away in shock. Nuestros labios se encontraron for just an instant amidst all this turmoil. "What was that?" Tom asked sharply, looking between us with suspicion brewing in his eyes. "Nothing. Just, let's focus on getting through this," I stammered awkwardly as heat rose to my cheeks. The storm clouds gathered ominously overhead as we finished securing everything on deck. The wind howled around us like a wild animal unleashed from its cage. With every gust that hit us, fear seeped deeper into my bones. This wasn't just about fixing an engine anymore, it felt like survival itself hung by a thread. Mark took charge again and began shouting instructions over the increasing roar of nature's fury outside. "Everyone grab something sturdy. We might take on water." I clutched onto a railing tightly while glancing at Tom's face. His worry mirrored my own fears perfectly as we prepared ourselves for whatever lay ahead. Suddenly another wave surged toward us with alarming force. It crashed against our side violently enough that I thought for sure we'd capsize completely this time around. But somehow we managed to stay upright again, barely, only now soaked through and shivering from both cold and fear alike. "We need to come up with a plan," I yelled over the wind's deafening cries. "Let's figure out how to signal for help." Tom suggested urgently while scanning our surroundings, desperately searching for any sign of land or other vessels nearby. Mark nodded but then paused thoughtfully before proposing something riskier than I'd anticipated. What if we try using some flares? It could attract attention. My heart raced at his suggestion. It felt like both hope and danger intertwined dangerously close together now as reality set in. Limited supplies meant no room for mistakes or wasted chances either way. Just then came another jolt. The yacht lurched violently once again, sending all three of us sprawling across the deck while shouting frantically, trying not to lose each other amidst chaos unfolding around us. In that moment of disorientation came clarity. Despite our differences and conflicts brewing beneath surface tensions between us all, we were united by sheer instinct, driven by survival itself, pushing past everything else, clouding judgment until only one thought remained clear. We had to survive this night together, no matter what cost awaited beyond those darkened waves looming just ahead. The yacht shuddered as another wave crashed against its side, sending water spraying over us. I felt the cold sting of salt on my skin and realized how vulnerable we truly were. We spent the night together, huddled close for warmth, but the chill wasn't just from the sea. It was a shared fear that hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "Can we do something about this engine?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The boss looked at me, his expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. He nodded slowly, knowing we needed to act fast. The tension between us was palpable, but survival had to come first. As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the turbulent waters, I spotted something in the distance, a ship moving steadily across the horizon. Hope surged within me. "Look!" I shouted, pointing towards it. But as quickly as it appeared, it vanished behind a wave. My heart sank. We were still alone out here. "Do you think they saw us?" the boss asked, his brow furrowed with worry. I shook my head, feeling helpless. Our supplies were dwindling, just a few bottles of water left and some granola bars we had packed for our trip. The thought of running out made my stomach turn. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the air as another wave hit us hard. The yacht tilted dangerously to one side, and I grabbed onto the railing for dear life. "We need to stabilize this boat," I shouted over the roar of the wind. "We could try to use those sails," he suggested urgently. We both moved to adjust them while trying to keep our balance on the rocking deck. The fear of capsizing pushed us into action. It was either work together or risk losing everything. As we struggled with the sails, I felt a flicker of connection between us again, a reminder of those moments when laughter had filled this space instead of dread. It was confusing but undeniable. Perhaps survival was forging new bonds among us in ways I never anticipated. Just then, another wave crashed against us with ferocity, knocking me off my feet and sending me sprawling across the deck once more. My heart raced as panic set in again. How long could we endure this? Would our efforts be enough? The boss reached out a hand to help me up, his grip firm yet reassuring amidst chaos swirling around us. "We can't give up," he said firmly. I nodded but couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling creeping into my thoughts. What if this situation brought out more than just our instincts? What would happen when we finally reached land? As night descended once more upon us with its heavy blanket of darkness, I couldn't ignore that gnawing sense of dread deep inside me any longer. What awaited us beyond these waves? The night was colder than I anticipated. We huddled together, seeking warmth amidst the dampness that clung to our skin. The waves crashed against the hull, a constant reminder of our precarious situation. I glanced at my husband's boss, Mark, who sat across from me, his expression a mix of concern and something else, something I didn't want to acknowledge. "Do you think we'll be rescued?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark shrugged, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We have to believe we will. It's just a matter of time." I shifted uncomfortably. The limited supplies were weighing heavily on my mind. We had enough water for another day at most, and the snacks were dwindling fast. What if we don't see land soon? He looked at me with intensity. We need to come up with a plan. I nodded, feeling the weight of our situation pressing down on me like the ocean itself. Just then, a faint sound reached my ears, a distant voice carried by the wind. My heart raced as I strained to listen. Did you hear that? I asked urgently. Mark nodded slowly, his brow furrowing in concentration. It could be another boat. We leaned over the edge of the yacht, shouting into the night in hopes of drawing attention. Help! Over here! My voice echoed into the darkness but quickly faded away without an answer. The voices grew fainter until they vanished entirely, leaving us in an even deeper silence than before. Frustration bubbled inside me. It felt like fate was playing some cruel game. We need to try something else, I said finally, desperation creeping into my tone. Mark suggested a risky maneuver. What if we use whatever's left of our fuel to make noise? Maybe someone will hear us. I hesitated but knew we had little choice left. Okay, I agreed reluctantly. As he began working on the engine again, I couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and dread. What if this didn't work? Or worse, what if it did? The tension hung thick in the air as we both focused on our task. Hours passed with only intermittent success. We managed to create a loud noise but still no sign of rescue came our way. Just when I thought despair would consume us entirely, dawn broke over the horizon, a glimmering promise against all odds. As daylight crept in, I spotted something moving in the distance, a ship. My heart leaped at the sight as I waved frantically and shouted again. Over here. Please. But as quickly as it appeared, it sailed past us without noticing our plight. Anguish washed over me. How could they not see us? My hands trembled as reality settled back in. Our situation remained dire. Mark placed a hand on my shoulder gently. We can't give up now, he urged softly. Easy for you to say. I snapped back before realizing how harsh my words sounded in this fragile moment. I'm just trying to help, he replied quietly. I closed my eyes for a moment and took a deep breath, reminding myself that anger wouldn't help us survive this ordeal. Whatever was happening between us couldn't matter now. As day turned into night again, we settled down for another cold evening together under thin blankets made from spare sails. Our bodies huddled close for warmth again. It felt strange yet oddly comforting amidst chaos. Do you think they'll send someone tomorrow? Mark asked softly after some time had passed in silence. I hope so, I murmured back while staring out at endless waters reflecting moonlight like shards of glass scattered upon dark waves. Then suddenly, the engine sputtered back to life. A sound so foreign yet welcome filled me with renewed energy and hope surged through my veins once more. What did you do? I exclaimed incredulously as Mark grinned widely at me, his earlier frustration replaced by exhilaration now coursing through him too. I don't know. But it's working. He jumped up excitedly before rushing toward steering wheel where he began navigating carefully toward where land might be hiding behind those distant waves ahead. But just then, it happened again. An argument erupted between us over who should steer while facing uncertain waters ahead filled with unseen dangers lurking beneath surface. I should do it. You're too distracted. Mark insisted vehemently while gripping Will tightly as if trying to keep control over everything around him, including me. Stop. We need teamwork right now. My voice rose above crashing waves around us. Fear mixed with frustration threatened to swallow whole everything left unspoken between us two. In that moment, the tension reached its peak. We were caught between survival instincts battling emotions threatening to tear apart fragile bonds forged during these harrowing days adrift together. Then suddenly, we heard another sound rising above chaos surrounding us, laughter echoing eerily across restless sea. The laughter faded as quickly as it came, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. My heart raced, caught between the fear of being lost at sea and the strange comfort I found in our shared predicament. The cold was biting, and I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the chill. The boss, Mark, glanced at me, his expression a mix of concern and something else, something I dared not acknowledge. "How are we going to survive this night?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We need to stay close for warmth," he replied, his tone pragmatic but laced with an underlying tension. As darkness enveloped us, we huddled together in the small cabin of the yacht. The engine's failure loomed over us like a specter, and I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives were spiraling out of control. We spent the night together for warmth, but it felt more like a prison than a refuge. Each breath was heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Just before dawn broke, I spotted a flicker of light on the horizon. My heart leaped, hope surged within me. "Look." I pointed towards the faint glow. "A ship." Mark squinted into the distance. "We need to signal them," he said urgently. We scrambled to find anything that could attract attention. A piece of cloth from my bag became our makeshift flag. As we waved it frantically, my mind raced with thoughts of what would happen if we were rescued. Would my husband believe me? Would Mark? The ship drew closer but didn't seem to notice us at all. Panic clawed at my throat as it sailed past without stopping. "They didn't see us," I exclaimed in disbelief. "Calm down," Mark said sharply, frustration creeping into his voice. "We can try again." But despair began to creep back in as daylight fully illuminated our surroundings. Our isolation became painfully clear once more. As hours passed with no sign of help, we turned inward again, our emotions raw against the backdrop of desperation. I could feel the tension rising between Mark and me. It was as if the weight of our choices hung heavily in the air. "Maybe we should just give up," I muttered bitterly. "Don't say that," he snapped back, his eyes flashing with anger that mirrored my own frustrations. Just then, a distant rumble echoed across the water. A storm was brewing once more on the horizon. The clouds darkened ominously above us. Nature seemed determined to test our resolve further. "We have to prepare," Mark said grimly as he began securing loose items around the deck. I helped him without thinking. Survival instinct kicked in over personal turmoil. Yet every movement felt heavy with unspoken words. The affair that had begun as an escape now felt like a chain binding us together in this nightmare. As we worked side by side, I caught glimpses of him. His determination contrasted sharply against my growing doubt about everything that had led us here. Then suddenly, amid our frantic preparations, he turned to me with an intensity that made my heart race. "I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted softly. My breath hitched at his confession. Emotions surged within me like waves crashing against rocks. But before I could respond, another sound interrupted. Thunder rolled overhead as rain began to pour down violently around us. "We need to get inside," I shouted over the storm's roar. We rushed back into the cabin just as lightning lit up the sky. It felt like nature itself was reflecting our internal chaos. Huddled together again for warmth amidst rising tensions and fears for our lives, everything shifted dramatically when Mark suddenly pulled out something from his pocket, a small camera. "What are you doing?" I gasped in shock as he began recording us both against this chaotic backdrop. "I want proof," he said simply but firmly. "Proof? Of what?" My voice trembled with disbelief at this turn of events. "Of everything," he replied cryptically before turning off the camera abruptly as thunder crashed outside again, a reminder that time was running out for all of us aboard this fragile vessel adrift in turbulent waters. In that moment, the stakes changed entirely. Survival took on new meaning beyond mere physical existence. It now encompassed secrets waiting to unravel once we returned home. The storm raged outside, a relentless reminder of our precarious situation. I felt the weight of the camera's presence lingering in the air, a silent witness to our escalating tension. My mind raced with thoughts of what the boss had captured, and I wondered if he intended to use it against me. "We need to signal for help," I said, trying to regain some semblance of control. The boss nodded, his expression serious. "We can make an SOS sign with the supplies we have left." The urgency in his voice cut through my fear. We gathered what we could, life jackets, spare fabric, and began arranging them on the deck. Each piece felt like a desperate plea for rescue. As we worked, despair crept in again. The waves crashed against the yacht, drowning out our hopes as quickly as they surged. "What if no one sees us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The boss looked at me, his eyes reflecting my own fears. "We have to believe they will," he replied firmly. Once our makeshift SOS was complete, we stepped back to admire our work. It was large and bold against the white deck, but just as I felt a flicker of hope, dark clouds rolled in again overhead. "The storm is coming back," I warned, panic rising within me. "Let's secure everything," he said sharply, taking charge as thunder boomed ominously above us. We scrambled to tie down loose items and prepare for the worst, but deep down I knew that our unity was beginning to fracture under pressure. As night fell once more, visibility dropped significantly. The wind howled around us like a living entity intent on tearing us apart. "We should have stayed close together," I murmured to myself as I huddled near the edge of the boat. "Don't lose hope yet," he said softly beside me. "We can't let fear win." His words were meant to encourage me but only reminded me how fragile our alliance had become. Trust was slipping through my fingers like sand. Hours passed in agonizing silence punctuated by crashing waves and distant thunderclaps. Just when exhaustion threatened to pull me under completely, I spotted something, a distant light flickering on the horizon. "Look!" I shouted excitedly. The boss leaned forward, squinting into the darkness. "It could be another ship." His enthusiasm reignited my hope momentarily until reality hit. What if it wasn't? What if it was just a mirage conjured by desperation? "Can you signal them?" he asked urgently as adrenaline surged through both of us once more. "I'll try." I scrambled for anything reflective. A piece of metal from the yacht's interior caught my eye, and began waving it frantically toward the light while calling out for help at the top of my lungs. But as quickly as it had appeared, that glimmer vanished behind thick clouds rolling in like an angry beast ready to consume us whole again. My heart sank, despair wrapped its icy fingers around me once more. "What now?" he asked quietly beside me again after minutes spent in silence staring into nothingness. "We wait," I replied hollowly though every fiber of my being screamed against it. Waiting meant uncertainty and fear gnawed at my insides relentlessly. Hours turned into an eternity until finally sleep claimed me despite everything. The relentless crashing waves lulled me into an uneasy slumber where nightmares awaited just beneath its surface. Suddenly jolted awake by violent rocking beneath us, the yacht creaked ominously. I stumbled out onto deck only to find chaos unfolding before my eyes. Rain lashed down mercilessly while wind whipped around us like a furious demon intent on sinking this vessel entirely. "Get below deck," shouted the boss over howling winds that drowned out all rational thought. Panic surged within me yet still compelled forward blindly toward safety despite knowing well enough that hiding wouldn't solve anything. I hesitated briefly before retreating inside but couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling that something terrible awaited us outside or perhaps even worse. The truth about what had happened between him and me would soon come crashing down just like those waves battering against our fragile yacht. As dawn broke slowly over turbulent waters, gray skies beginning to lighten, I found myself staring blankly at nothingness when suddenly realization struck hard. We hadn't made any progress since last night. "We're still lost," I whispered under breath filled with dread as memories flooded back, laughter shared too easily between moments spent together, secrets exchanged without hesitation. all now tainted by betrayal lurking just beyond reach waiting patiently for its moment. Then came another twist. My heart raced when catching sight of something looming ahead. A rocky formation jutted out dangerously from depths below, threatening disaster at every turn. "Steer clear," shouted my instincts, even though no one seemed capable anymore. Fear clouded judgment while adrenaline surged uncontrollably, causing chaos amongst all three aboard this cursed vessel adrift amidst unforgiving seas. But before any action could be taken, a loud crash echoed through air, followed swiftly by water pouring inside, threatening imminent disaster unless immediate measures were enacted. In those fleeting moments filled with uncertainty, everything spiraled out control faster than anyone could comprehend, leaving only one question lingering painfully unanswered: would we survive this harrowing ordeal or succumb entirely beneath turbulent tides? The chaos of the moment enveloped us like a thick fog. The yacht shuddered violently as another wave crashed against the hull, sending water spraying over the deck. I clutched the railing, my heart racing. "We need to stabilize the boat," I shouted, my voice barely cutting through the roar of the sea. The boss, Mark, scrambled to secure loose equipment while Anna, my husband's wife, tried to assess the damage below deck. "I can't find where the water's coming from," she yelled back, panic creeping into her tone. The urgency of our situation was palpable. We were adrift in a vast ocean with no clear way out. As we worked together in a frantic effort to keep the yacht afloat, Mark turned to me. "We have to keep our heads clear," he said firmly. "If we lose it now, we won't survive." His words struck a chord amidst my rising anxiety. I nodded, trying to focus on our immediate goal rather than the emotional turmoil swirling inside me. Suddenly, as if fate had chosen that moment to intervene, a helicopter appeared overhead. Its whirring blades sliced through the air above us like a beacon of hope. "They'll see us," I exclaimed, waving my arms frantically. But just as quickly as it had appeared, the helicopter veered away into the distance. My heart sank as despair washed over me again. "Why didn't they see us?" Anna whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I felt her desperation echoing within myself. We were trapped in this nightmare together. Mark cursed under his breath and kicked at a loose piece of equipment on deck in frustration. The tension between us was palpable. Every second felt like an eternity. "Let's signal again," I suggested urgently. We gathered whatever materials we could find, an old tarp and some flares, and began crafting an SOS sign on the deck. As we worked side by side, I couldn't shake off Mark's earlier confession about his feelings for me during our time alone on this yacht. It complicated everything between us. As dusk fell once more and darkness enveloped us like a shroud, I glanced at Mark and Anna huddled together for warmth against the chill in the air. The weight of our shared predicament pressed heavily upon me. Survival instincts clashed with unresolved emotions that threatened to spill over at any moment. "We need each other now more than ever," Mark said quietly after a long silence broke among us. His gaze lingered on me longer than necessary, as if searching for something unspoken between us. I caught Anna watching him too, her expression unreadable but charged with tension. Just then, my mind raced back to thoughts of home and family, the life I'd built with my husband that now felt so distant yet so close at hand amid this turmoil. What would happen when we returned? Would any of us be able to face each other again? A sudden gust of wind whipped across the deck as if mocking our plight. It sent chills down my spine and reminded me of how precarious our situation truly was. We needed rescue, yet here we were fighting not just for survival but against feelings that threatened everything we thought we knew about ourselves. In that moment of vulnerability under starlit skies surrounded by endless ocean waves crashing around us, I realized how fragile bonds could become when faced with adversity, and how easily they could fray beyond repair if left unchecked. Then came another crash, a loud thud resonated from below deck followed by an unsettling silence that settled over all three of us like leaden weight pressing down heavily upon our hearts. "What was that?" Anna asked, nervously glancing toward where sound originated from below deck, a place now filled with uncertainty, just like our future seemed to be unraveling before us too rapidly for comfort or clarity. "I'll check it out," Mark said resolutely, though hesitantly, stepping towards hatch leading down into darkness below. The very place holding secrets perhaps better left undiscovered amidst chaos unfolding around us above ground level here aboard this forsaken vessel adrift at sea. "Wait," I called out, instinctively grasping his arm firmly before he could descend further down into unknown depths where danger lurked unseen just beyond reach, yet somehow felt all too real beneath surface calmness betraying facade held tightly together until now. Mark turned back toward me, surprised yet intrigued by sudden urgency behind words spoken aloud, breaking tension lingering thickly between us, three souls intertwined through circumstance beyond control or comprehension, each one wrestling demons hidden deep within hearts, yearning desperately for connection even amidst despair threatening swallow whole everything once cherished dearly before fate intervened cruelly, casting shadows long since passed into light, illuminating truths best kept hidden away forevermore. But before any decision could be made, a deafening roar erupted from engine room below, abruptly disrupting fragile peace forged through shared struggle against odds stacked high against survival chances dwindling rapidly, leaving only one question lingering painfully unanswered. Would confronting secrets buried deep within ourselves lead toward salvation or doom? I felt the vibrations of the engine falter, a deep rumble reverberating through the hull. Mark's face shifted from concern to panic as he sprinted toward the engine room. I followed him, my heart racing. The tension in our trio was palpable, thickening the air around us. "What's happening?" I called out, my voice strained. "The engine's overheating," Mark shouted back, his hands working frantically at the controls. The boss stood nearby, arms crossed, watching without offering assistance. "Can't you fix it?" I pressed, anxiety creeping into my tone. "I'm trying," he snapped, frustration evident in his voice. The weight of our situation pressed down on all of us, the looming storm outside and our dwindling supplies made every moment feel more desperate. Suddenly, a loud hiss erupted from below deck, followed by a cloud of steam that filled the cabin. Mark recoiled, coughing as he stumbled back. "We need to get it under control before it fails completely," he gasped. The boss finally stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from passive observer to participant. "Let's work together," he suggested, his voice calm yet authoritative. "We can't afford to panic." I nodded in agreement. We had no choice but to unite against this mechanical beast threatening our survival. As we scrambled to assess the damage, rain began to fall outside, a light drizzle at first but quickly turning into a torrential downpour. The yacht rocked violently with each wave crashing against its sides. We were all soaked within moments. In an attempt to salvage some semblance of normalcy amid chaos, I suggested we collect rainwater for drinking, an idea that seemed trivial but vital given our situation. Mark and I positioned buckets around while the boss kept an eye on the engine. "Got something?" Mark shouted suddenly as he pulled up a small fishing line from one of the rods we had tossed overboard earlier. My heart raced with hope until I saw what was caught, a tiny fish barely big enough for a single bite. "It's better than nothing," I said weakly, trying to mask my disappointment. Mark nodded but looked pensive, as if considering whether it was worth cooking or just letting it go back into the sea. Then came an unexpected twist. An argument broke out over leadership and decision-making in our dire situation. "I should be steering," Mark insisted vehemently after another wave rocked us hard. "No way. You're too emotional right now," the boss countered sharply. "Emotional? You're just trying to take charge because you think you know better," Mark shot back. I felt caught between their rising tempers and knew we couldn't afford this division while adrift in treacherous waters. "Stop. We need to focus on surviving," I interjected firmly, hoping my authority could quell their anger. Their eyes turned toward me, silence fell momentarily as they processed my words. It was clear that emotions were running high and survival instincts were being tested beyond limits we ever imagined facing together. As night fell again over us like a heavy blanket, I felt fatigue settling into my bones, a reminder of how much time had passed since we'd started this journey together. Just then, lightning illuminated the sky briefly before darkness enveloped us once more. "We can't let despair take hold," I said quietly as we huddled together for warmth beneath a makeshift tarp on deck after having spent another cold night together seeking comfort in shared misery rather than warmth from one another's bodies. The rain continued relentlessly. However, amidst this storm came another surprise, the faint sound of voices carried on the wind from somewhere nearby. My heart leapt at this glimmer of hope, perhaps help was closer than we thought. But then just as quickly as they appeared, the voices faded away into nothingness, leaving only silence behind them, once again mocking our efforts at rescue while reminding us how isolated we truly were amidst nature's fury surrounding us endlessly without mercy or reprieve. In that moment of despair mingled with fleeting hope, my mind wandered back to thoughts about relationships forged under duress. How fragile they could be when faced with adversity such as ours now unfolding before us like an unending nightmare threatening everything we held dear. "Let's keep working on that SOS signal," I suggested, finally breaking through their silence again, determined not let fear consume me completely despite overwhelming odds stacked against us all here adrift at sea without clear direction anymore. But even as those words left my lips, I sensed something shifting within me too, an awareness dawning upon me that perhaps this entire ordeal had brought forth deeper truths about ourselves none of us could ignore any longer. And yet before any further decisions could be made, the engine roared back to life unexpectedly, jolting all three of us upright instantly. Relief washed over me like warm sunlight breaking through dark clouds overhead, but doubt crept in quickly thereafter. Was this merely temporary reprieve, or would chaos return once more? As if sensing my uncertainty, the boss turned toward me with newfound confidence gleaming in his eyes, saying firmly, "Let's steer back toward shore." Mark hesitated, glancing between us both, unsure whether he could trust either one anymore given everything that had transpired thus far, but ultimately nodded reluctantly, agreeing despite lingering doubts still swirling inside him too. Little did we know how much more peril awaited us ahead just beyond horizon, waiting patiently ready strike once again when least expected. The engine sputtered back to life, a sound both miraculous and ominous. I felt a rush of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by the tension that hung in the air. Mark and the boss exchanged glances filled with unspoken questions, their trust in each other fraying like the frayed ropes securing the sails. I stood between them, caught in a web of my own making. "Let's steer towards that point on the horizon," I suggested, trying to sound confident. They nodded, but I could see doubt clouding their faces. The boat lurched as we adjusted our course, and I gripped the helm tightly, aware that every decision could mean safety or disaster. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Mark asked, his voice edged with concern. "I think so," I replied, though uncertainty gnawed at me. The GPS had been unreliable before, we were navigating blind now. As we moved forward, the waves grew rougher. The yacht bobbed violently, and I felt my stomach churn. "Hold on," I shouted as a particularly large wave crashed against us. We struggled to keep our footing while managing the controls. Then came a sudden jolt, a loud clank echoed below deck. "What was that?" Mark yelled over the roar of wind and water. "I don't know. We need to check." The three of us hurried below deck, hearts racing as we braced ourselves for whatever awaited us in the cramped space. The engine compartment revealed a mess of wires hanging loose and fuel leaking onto the floor. Panic surged through me as I realized how precarious our situation had become again. "We have to fix this now," I urged. The boss stepped forward with an air of authority that seemed out of place given our dire circumstances. "I can handle this," he said confidently, but his bravado did little to reassure me. Mark should help you, I insisted, unwilling to let him take charge completely after everything that had happened between us. Fine, he replied tersely as they began working together under my direction. As they fumbled with tools and parts, I couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about who would come out on top when it was all over. Suddenly, a loud crash above deck interrupted us. "What now?" Mark exclaimed as we rushed back up to find chaos unfolding around us, water pouring into the yacht from a new breach caused by another wave crashing against us. "We need to bail out water," I shouted desperately as we scrambled for buckets and anything else we could use to stem the tide flooding in. As we worked frantically together, bailing water while trying to maintain some semblance of control over our vessel, I felt an odd sense of camaraderie building among us again despite everything that had happened. But just as quickly as it formed, doubt crept back in. Would this bond hold when faced with greater challenges ahead? After what felt like hours battling against nature's fury, we finally managed to stabilize things enough for a moment's respite. Breathing heavily, we looked at each other with shared exhaustion and unspoken fears lingering beneath our surface smiles. "We can make it through this," I encouraged them both even though my heart trembled with uncertainty about what lay ahead for each of us, and whether any trust remained intact among us after everything that had transpired on this trip. But then came another crash from below deck, this time accompanied by an unsettling silence above us that sent chills down my spine again like ice water coursing through my veins. "What now?" Mark asked warily while glancing nervously toward where he thought danger might strike next without warning again. "I don't know," I admitted, honestly feeling overwhelmed by how far from safety we still were despite having survived so much already together since leaving shore behind at dawn earlier today. Just then, my phone buzzed unexpectedly in my pocket, a reminder of reality waiting patiently just beyond reach, even here adrift amidst chaos swirling around us, now threatening everything familiar once more. Before I could react or decide whether to check it or not, the yacht suddenly lurched violently again, throwing all three of us off balance, sending me tumbling toward one side while Mark struggled desperately not get knocked down too hard beside me. And then everything went dark.